SingularityNET, and I'm co-CEO of Zarka, alongside Sergey Shalyapin, who is CTO of SingularityNET and also co-CEO of Zarka. I'm very blessed and privileged to lead this very, very important initiative right at a time when the AI revolution is taking off, where the world at large is realizing that anybody can use AI tools, that they can be built so that the whole of the world, whatever their level of education, so long as they have internet access and can use a computer, can get involved and use AI models. We're currently seeing 25 million people a day logging into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is a really great advance forwards in language models. However, it has a number of limitations, which we are setting out to overcome with our neural-symbolic infused methods into large language models. And that's what Zarka is all about. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sending your questions. And we're going to start going through your questions shortly. But first, let me introduce you to my esteemed panelists on this AMA this morning. It's morning where I am in Seattle. So Sergey, would you like to introduce yourself first, co-CEO of Zarka?
Yes, with pleasure. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for everyone. Good night, maybe. I'm Sergey Shalyapin. I'm working as CTO of SingularityNET right now, and with Zarka as co-CEO. I started AI something like more than 10 years ago, deeply, starting with natural language processing and many other domains. I personally, all these years, was mostly involved in language modeling and supervised learning, speech processing, time series processing, large-scale model training, supercomputing, which I just love. In fact, robotic cognitive architectures with all the components, and of course, neural-symbolic systems, which can benefit from the both worlds, from the symbolic computation and neural network learning at scale. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sergey. And we're very lucky to have you on the team at SingularityNET. Matt, you are our Chief Science Officer. Would you like to introduce yourself? I think our community know you already, but a little quick few drops about your background.
Sure. To follow up on Sergey's, I'm Chief Science Officer at SingularityNET, and I'm excited about what's the whole Zarka initiative. Excited about infusing neural-symbolic methods, and we'll have more to talk about that. I've been working with Ben. It's coming up close to 30 years, just shy of 30 years at this point, working with Ben on AI and AI-related topics.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Matt. And again, we're very lucky to have you on the team. And definitely not least, Sergey, Dr. Alexey Potapov, our Chief AGI Officer, in such an important role at such an important time for humanity when AGI is starting to look like becoming a reality. Would you please introduce yourself, Alexey?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Alexey Potapov, and I've been working in the field of AI and AGI for more than 20 years. I've been working at SingularityNET on neural cognitive systems, including OpenCog integration with deep neural networks from the beginning of creation of SingularityNET, and now my position is titled as Chief AGI Officer, and I'm really happy to be a part of Zarka project because it really is going to bring our efforts of in a neural symbolic integration to the next scale for sure.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Alexey. And it's such an honor to work with you as well. So with this panel of absolutely brilliant scientists, I'm very, very honored to get started on your question. So the first question is, how big is this towards AGI? And I guess to answer the question, we need to explain what the this is. Alexey, shall we start with you as our Chief AGI Officer? How big is this step that we're taking in Zarka when we purchase our 5,500 GPUs, infuse large language models with neural-symbolic and probabilistic reasoning techniques, and introduce our OpenCog Hyperon platform? How big is this as a step towards AGI, please, in your opinion?
Well, in my hopefully honest opinion, it might be not precisely the step that will achieve AGI immediately, but it should be really a big step towards it, because now we see how large language models are solving more and more complex tasks, and at the same time, we also know there are limitations for quite a while, and many of these limitations are still the same, and they're actually very similar to strong points of symbolic architectures. And for sure, if we successfully combine, and we have this experience of combining neural and symbolic components in a very deep synergetic fashion, if we do this on a larger scale, it will be a large step towards AGI for sure, and it will bring us closer to full-fledged neural-symbolic cognitive architectures and agency in such systems, which has not yet been achieved in any of the existing systems, because these systems are either not scale, have not enough scale to solve different problems in a wild, or they are not cognitive enough. So yes, I believe it should be maybe a half path towards AGI from where we are here now, I would say.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. Matt, do you have anything to add to that? How big is this towards AGI?
I think it is. I think Alexey's spot on. I think one of the issues that we're looking at is as we work forward in a lot of different directions, is how to scale the work that we've already spent a lot of time creating. And Zarka's one piece, these 5,500 GPUs, it's just one piece of helping us scale our systems towards creating true AGI, to creating sentience, basically.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's essential, really. It's absolutely essential for us to have the resources, the processing power to be able to process large volumes of data with billions and even trillions of parameters. Sergey, I'm going to come on to the next question for you, which is how smart in terms of reasoning and consciousness will it be? But also feel free to add your thoughts on how big of a step towards AGI Zarka is going to be.
I suppose that would be a really good and that would be a real step. You know, now when we are witnessing the limits of training neural networks just on the data, we see the limits of careful data management and brute force scaling. It works in an impressive way. And we witness some semi-reasoning or meta-reasoning capabilities even in existing models. We take it into account all of the limitations and understand the limitations, but it's impressive, in fact. But I would say that, and when we see these limitations and see this success, there are a lot of shallow attempts of how to integrate some symbolic techniques with neural networks. Thus, we see some projects try to integrate databases and do some to provide the models with additional knowledge via simple prompting techniques or something else. But I would say to make a real step towards AGI, we need to train neural networks in a completely different setup, in a completely different way, to be native to symbolic computing. Only that scenario will combine these approaches in the right way. So if we do that, that's the real step towards AGI. And that's the biggest step we can do right now. About consciousness and capabilities to be just capabilities to reason, capabilities to be sentient, it also brings us to limitations of the current systems. We can witness some kind of reasoning, but it's not logical reasoning, it's not grounded. It's not grounded to the real knowledge of the world. It's not grounded in situational awareness in many aspects, in fact. It couldn't rely on fast and efficient symbolic computations and processing symbolic equations, symbolic expressions, sorry. So just imagine if your system can do the both. Think about how people think. They can take some memories and use these memories to reproduce more or less adequate answer to the current situation. But sometimes you need really deep logical reasoning. You need to calculate everything on a symbolic level. People do that to while they're working with science, while they are going through the hypothesis. That's logical reasoning is the process who brought civilization to the current level. And that's the thing we need to make the model real conscious, real sentient. And also we need different types of memory and many other components. Advanced perception.
Thank you. Thank you, Sergey. So does anyone else have anything to add to that, Matt or Alexey? How smart in terms of reasoning and consciousness will it be? It's hard to say how smart. Do we mean like as smart as a bug, as smart as a 1-year-old, as smart as, well, nothing's going to be as smart as you three guys for a long, long time. But has anybody got any kind of benchmarks or performance analogies you can give to how smart it's going to be in terms of reasoning and consciousness? Clearly, it'll be smarter than today's large language models. That much is true. Will it be as smart as full AGI? Matt or Alexey, any thoughts?
I guess it depends on the time frame that you're looking at. I mean, what Sergey laid out is spot on, and the way I often think about it has to do in a different sense of the word scale, because that reasoning and capabilities have to carry through from essentially the kind of the subscale, the subsymbolic scale, which is one of the things we're doing with Zarka, and also higher order reasoning capabilities, which Sergey was talking about. And it's trying to infuse these things at kind of this hierarchy of sizes, of scales. I didn't answer your question because I think it's not, again, the initial stages will probably be very basic, but that it will rapidly be able to grow to higher levels of intelligence. So the time scale is what's important there.
Very good point. Thank you.
Actually, yeah, we can compare what we expect with current LLM models, LLMs. In fact, GPT-4 is much more capable in terms of emulating reasoning than, say, GPT 3.5, and it really looks like it can reason, and it looks like non-trivial, but still it is a model which is trained in a sort of to process information in a bottom-up manner, so it can hold quite a long context, and it hashed a lot of examples and abstracted different or generalized different kinds of reasoning steps which it saw in the training data set, which was really huge. So it can produce very interesting results which can look like reasoning, but it's not reasoning, it's still like a reflex, or at least it has a fixed finite number of steps of information processing. So it's not recursive, and while it combines things during the course of this information processing, it still is limited in what it can produce. So while we cannot say that it's just a recall of its former experience, because it does have some capabilities of recombination of pieces of this experience to produce something new, it doesn't have a conceptual model of what it is processing. It doesn't understand it in the same way as we do. And it's a kind of limitation, because it cannot use this deep, not deep in terms of neural networks, but in terms of conceptual spaces, deep models of reality, underlying models, underlying regularities, which can be much easier processed in a symbolic way and produce much more novel results. Well, there is a comparison of deep neural networks with Ptolemaic epicycles. When you have a lot of data and you add more and more epicycles to describe this data, but you just have a wrong model. You can describe this data very precisely, but you cannot generalize well, because you cannot represent corresponding regularities, and you cannot move outside this space. So you stick to this space of representations, and you cannot just invent a Kepler model of a solar system. And this is what, in principle, symbolic methods should do. But of course, symbolic methods are very brittle for now. And this is why, as Sergey mentioned, we need training of deep neural networks and symbolic reasoning systems. And maybe there are questions regarding this later. Maybe I'm a little bit jumping ahead, but we have had these experiments with OpenCog Classic, when we co-trained probabilistic logic network rules together with deep neural networks, and they were ended end-to-end, and these rules and their parameters were inferred in the course of training. And together, these two techniques can produce both non-brittle, non-fragile, and at the same time productive novel results. So This is why I would say that yes, this is what we expect would be or should be really ahead behind current capabilities of deep neural networks because they should be able to produce novel results and consistent or para-consistent results in terms of underground the world model it has under the hood. And if we are talking about consciousness, it's actually a difficult topic because consciousness is kind of mystified. So if we are talking about hard problem of consciousness, then I wouldn't say something concrete in this regard. But if we consider consciousness on a much more technical level, like self-knowledge, consistent behavior, and so on, then of course symbolic components, memories, self-knowledge represented in an explicit and transparent way, they should be much more reliable and interpretable and controllable than in case of pure deep neural network large language models. And in this sense, yes, we hope that it will be smart in terms of consciousness, at least if we are not considering hard problem of consciousness than the existing LLMs.
Thank you very much. That was a great summary of the differences between standard LLMs and LLMs with neural-symbolic, with their advanced controllability, trainability, and the world model. Thank you, Alexey. And I agree. As a minnow compared to you giant whales in science, I agree they're going to be a giant leap above the capability of today's LLMs. So somebody has asked, how far have you got with the neural symbolic aspect of Zarka? Can you give examples of how the AI has demonstrated this kind of reasoning? Now, obviously, we haven't yet started. We haven't built the technology stack and hired the people and bought the GPUs and started the neural symbolic Zarka models in development yet. But we've been working with neural symbolic AI for years or decades in some cases. Matt, perhaps, do you have any examples or estimate of how far we've gotten with neural symbolic AI?
So I would say we do. And this goes back to some experiments actually that we've run from a few years ago, and in which they were preliminary experiments, so it's hard to say fast and sure, but we basically, in a couple of experiments, one we had some planning processes emerge, essentially. And so this was in our neural symbolic architecture. This was, as I said, this goes back a few years prior to seeing the same kinds of things at a larger scale in GPT 3.5 or GPT-4. Without massive training sets. So that's one thing that I would say distinguishes our approach. And there, as I said, there have been, that was a proto-AGI experiment creating cognitive schematics and temporal reasoning that Neil Geisweiler worked on in a Minecraft world. There's some other examples, and again, some of these have to do with our OpenCog Classic system, where we were still limited to the scale at which we could work, which is why we're pursuing our new approaches to basically scale things up. The similar ideas, but at hyperspeed, supercharged, so to speak.
Okay.
And that one had to do with the ability again to connect concepts that are floating around in the system. Concepts that emerge again without being triggered directly. So floating up to the attentional, percolating up to the attentional focus, the focus of attention at any given time, much as what happens in our everyday world as we're focused here on the AMA. If I heard some loud explosion outside the door, I probably would leave the AMA. And that's the idea of the attentional focus. And so we've seen some of these similar emergent phenomena occur in those experiments that probably go back a few years in time.
Okay, thank you very much. Alexey, anything to add on that? And then, so yeah, if you have a look at the sheet, I've got kind of 4 LLM training questions lined up for you next. Thank you. Alexey, anything to add about how far we've got with neural-symbolic?
Yeah, actually, there is a lot of to add. I will repeat what Matt said, that Zarka has not yet started to train models and to do this sort of integration, but we have a lot of former experience with it, and I can recall different use cases as well as research directions. For example, we applied neural-symbolic techniques for automatic street scene analysis and analysis of behavior of humans. And for these cases, we trained grounded predicates together with pattern mining, some new rules to detect anomalies in behavior of objects like cars, pedestrians, and so on. We had a lot of research on neural-symbolic visual question answering, and we were greatly inspired by this domain because there are such questions which really require understanding of scenes, not just randomly combining some features. And we invented our own we called them cognets. So it was a form of neural module networks, but instead of having an ad hoc engine for running different neural models, it was controlled by OpenCog. We are playing with neural-symbolic integration in the Minecraft world, both what Matt mentioned about Neil's work, but we are also doing another form of neural-symbolic integration when we have some grounded skills and loss functions for the skills are derived from symbolic goals. So we have reasoning and planning on top of grounded skills, and they are working together. We also had a short excurse towards smart home automation. We had a Cog Home project with an OpenCog classic reasoning capabilities on top of grounded functions to control smart home components, devices, and so on. And we used neural networks there to perform natural language to OpenCog queries translation. And there are many other things in our experience log. But the problem always was that we had not enough GPU resources to train large neural networks together with such symbolic components together, as was mentioned, which is necessary. And that's why we either fine-tuned existing networks or with existing architectures which were not perfectly fit to our neural-symbolic integration approach, or we did this on a lower scale. And of course, when you don't train a language model, but by the way, we also had different experiments in language learning, also in the context of neural-symbolic integration. But in any case, when you train a language model not on the whole internet, or at least not on Wikipedia, but just on phrases regarding smart home control requests, then of course it will not know a lot of things which these large language models know, and that's why scaling is extremely important to show off the capabilities of neural-symbolic systems. And we hope that with this Zarka start, we will be able to move to the next scale.
Thank you. Were you going to jump in there? Someone going to jump in?
I just wanted to Alexey reminded me of the smart traffic analytics system, and our contact. So that was a system that we worked on with Cisco. Our contact there, Hugo Latapi. And one thing I just wanted to bring out was a quote that he made at 2019 conference, AGI conference. And his quote was, "Here's an example of a system that is able to learn some of these things on its own, where the roads are, the sidewalks, etc., and determine what's a potential problem with the jaywalking, cars on the sidewalk, collisions, and other things." Recall, this is 2019. So this is real, it's functioning, and we're actually looking at deploying this. And notice the neural-symbolic system, and that here's where Zarka can provide us the resources and the co-training to take this beyond what's already existing.
To infinity and beyond there, Matt.
I was about to say that.
You were about to say. Certainly we're going to exponentially hyperscale up our neural-symbolic capabilities. So thank you both for giving our listeners a sense of our prior achievements and current capabilities in neural-symbolic methods. Sergey, over to you for a few of the technical questions about how we're going to train the models, please. Somebody asks, how fast and big, huge, enormous can it scale up? Numbers, please. Have you got some zetascale or yottaflops up your sleeve for this one, Sergey? And then how are you planning to train the LLMs? How is data fed into these? Anyone developing dependency relations? And how is it designed from the outset to achieve human level AGI? So I'll give you a run at those 5 questions.
Thank you. Yottaflops, it's too much. In fact, that's theoretical figure. I'm not sure that's all the energy on Earth. It's enough to run the hardware, let's say on 7 nanometers or 5 nanometers to get yottaflops. But zetascale is just a scale where we like to move to in terms of compute, at least in terms of theoretical peak of our computing systems. And that's the thing we really need. I would start, first of all, from figures that we will have an AGI-driven design of a hardware system. So it couldn't be just simply compared as apple to apple to the systems which were designed just to train pure neural models. That's the first thing. As a start, we just get 500 GPUs for the proof of concept and immediately start utilizing that for the first prototypes. These prototypes, I guess, will be used to achieve billions of parameters, but just maybe dozens billions of parameters, but not hundreds. And we have some questions in the list of questions addressed to me. And one of the questions was to comment Sam Altman's quote about limitations of scaling. He just said that right now, scaling is not a silver bullet. Mm-hmm. And he's right. So some laboratories just came to trillions of parameters, especially huge Chinese universities, but not only them. We could have trillion parameter models, but in fact, we need hundreds or dozens of parameters if the training is efficient enough. It would be much better to utilize the same computing power in the design to make models better and better in an incremental way, try different ways in practice, and get medium scale models but working really, really well. For some cases, maybe we will need huge scale training, like I would say 100 billions of parameters. But afterwards, we will need such models, for example, trained on the whole web. We will need some balance between the data we feed to the model, to the initial model, and the quantity of parameters within that model. That's for sure. So maybe if we will just decode, or let's say 5 years or 7 years of web text to duplicate it totally, and train several hundreds of parameters model, we could afterwards distill it and make some pruning, make some operations to make it smaller, to reuse it in actor-critic frameworks, in some other ways, because we see that we will not just have pure models, even taking into account that would be especially trained and co-trained with symbolic subsystems. And
may I jump in?
Yes, please.
Because I'm not sure if you're going to answer all the question in a row. So I would like to agree with Sergey, but even to amplify some of his claims. So basically, if we discuss the possibility to change the architecture, and we agree that the current architectures are basically hashed versions of intelligence in terms of like a reflex is what you get from experience, and if you want to create a reflex which is extremely wide, then you will need a lot of things to memorize, but intelligence doesn't work in this way. It's more efficient. It has specialized components for frequently recurrent tasks, but when tasks are not that frequent, then it may not need to hash all the solutions inside this bottom-up process in a way. And LLMs hash a lot of duplicated information. No, it's difficult to call it knowledge in a traditional sense. So they hash a lot of duplicated information in different contexts, and that's why they're so huge. And if we are talking about knowledge, which is recombinable knowledge, then it can be much more compact. And instead of hashing everything inside weights of this feed-forward neural network with attention and so on, it can just learn how to efficiently query its memory if it has memory. So I can show it on one particular example. For example, we have mu0, which plays well 4 games, or maybe 5 right for now. And it actually just, well, not just because it's a complex process, but in any case, it hashed these games. So instead of enumerating too many possibilities at runtime, it enumerated them during learning and hashed them in a certain way. So it reverted this search tree into this bottom-up processing, which is kind of linear, but it has done this for just a few games. And it's of course, if it is able to share some abstractions between different games, it can be not that huge, and adding more games might produce less than linear increase in the number of parameters. But still, when we are talking about AGI, when we are talking about the whole knowledge of humanity, it's huge. And hashing all possible reasoning steps in this model, it's kind of possible. GPT-4 shows that it's basically possible, but it's still not precisely AGI. It's not what we finally want in terms of open-endedness, in terms of creativity, and so on. So this extensive approach, kind of brute force approach, it doesn't necessarily to scale it up for trillions of parameters. If we change the architecture, right, and if we can reuse, if we can teach such models to reuse, maybe not necessarily purely symbolic knowledge, but at least explicit knowledge in a form of memory knowledge base, maybe graph or just some hierarchical memory. It doesn't matter too much for now in the context of what we are talking about. Then maybe we really don't need to have a controller with trillions of parameters to address this memory. It can be just a few billions of parameters or 10 billions of parameters. So yes, it's not precisely the question of scaling the same architecture to more and more parameters. So sorry for jumping in.
No. I think that's what people want to hear, and it's really insightful and it's really useful to hear as well. So it's not just about size; it's about smartness, efficiency, and scaling up and learning to scale back down again. I guess if I were to really super summarize.
Yes.
Right, I'm going to just, thank you. I'm going to have to leave, or at least drop off and drop back on again in about 10 minutes because I have a face-to-face meeting coming up. But these guys are okay to overrun. I think Matt and Sergey are. We've got so many questions. I should have put this in the calendar for 2 hours to start with because it's so interesting. There's so much to talk about. I'm going to just jump down to some of the business model questions and the investment questions before I jump off, and then Peter or somebody maybe can mark these questions as answered. So what will the business model behind Zarka be? In our original business case, we are planning to obviously Zarka will run on the SingularityNET platform. That's just a starting point for any SingularityNET spin-off. And by having much more powerful models than ChatGPT, we're anticipating that it will really increase the scale and adoption and utilization of AGIX on the platform. So that's number one. We'll run them on the SingularityNET platform. Somebody's making a comment here about OpenAI being free to use for consumers. And to the extent that OpenAI remains free to use for consumers, then I guess we'll match that as a model. It's a very good point, well made. The business case as articulated and originally designed in the investor deck is to attack two very fast growing, very high compound annual growth rate markets in devices. So one is smart speakers devices and one is smart toys, including educational toys. We also plan on working with TruthGPT, our sister company, to wrap Zarka into TruthGPT's APIs for serving it as a service. So as part of our AGI as a service to enterprise, we'll have Zarka large language models, large image models, large models, music models, models of all kinds wrapped in TruthGPT APIs straight to enterprise. And we're also going to work on robotic process automation, potentially with a partnership with one of the big RPA companies, such as like Blue Prism, because clearly an intelligent, reasoning, easily human trainable model has got huge amounts of potential for any organization size, for streamlining operations, for improving processes, and for enhancing levels of customer support and customer service, as well as dramatically increasing the outreach of any customer-facing staff, such as sales teams and business development teams. So it'll support growth, it will support operations, it will support streamlining and efficiency. And then we also envisage that there will be all new business models that will spring up out of this kind of Cambrian mass explosion of life, if you like, where new business models, new opportunities, and new markets are likely to expand. So that's the business model. Zarka will be based in the Middle East. Why not Iceland, Norway, etc.? Middle East has been chosen really for its geopolitical status, for its easy. We're basing it in the UAE. UAE has got a huge ambition to be number one in the world for artificial intelligence. It's a very, very fertile soil in which to plant a tech giant. It gives us access to Saudi and all of the other GCC countries, and it also gives us easy access into North Africa, where of course we have a base already in Ethiopia. So the Middle East has been chosen as a tax friendly, corporate friendly, and AI-friendly jurisdiction to be able to base ourselves from. But we will also be, we anticipate having a technology hub probably in Ireland for Europe, potentially South America, potentially Korea. So we won't be based only in one location. We plan a rapid global market attack. How can we invest in the project? Thank you for asking that. And I've had a number of people reach out to me, both on Telegram and on Twitter, to ask the same question. Of course, investing, it's different to it's not a crypto project. So we won't be doing our traditional TGE approach that we have done, where there is participation as opposed to investment. Now that this is a equity project, if you would like to invest, please just drop me a message on Telegram. I'm at Janet Adams AI on Telegram, and let me know. We set quite a high minimum ticket size simply because of the amount we're raising. We're raising $15 million seed funding. And the second round is $130 million Series A at the start of 2024. So we set quite a high minimum ticket size simply because of the amount of administration involved in dealing with and administering with every single investor going forwards. I think somebody asked, could we expect a large base of citizens, tens of thousands, investing a few bucks? That's not how we are. We're not approaching it as a crowd fund type activity. Really, we're looking for, and we're working with accredited investors, with business angels, VCs, private equity houses, generally speaking. But if you do want to invest, message me, and if we can accommodate it, then we shall. So that is a bunch of the business models. I'll answer one or two more, and then I'm going to have to leave you to these guys for a little period. Everybody's talking about other spin-offs, but how do SDAO use in Zarka and how it'll help trading? I'll use this question to hand over to Sergey, who's going to continue hosting, as I have to unfortunately shoot off. But clearly, a neural-symbolic infused large language model will be terrifically good at developing trading strategies, explaining trading strategies, and evaluating market trends in a better way, with a better ability to cope with idiosyncratic risk than a standard LLM would have. But I'll hand over to Sergey with that. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of timelines and where we are with the project before I go. So what we're currently engaged in, what is proving to be which really got off to a great start with our fundraising for the seed $15 million. We plan to start purchasing GPUs and start building our proof of concept model, start building our hardware in June, start building our proof of concept model from September through to December, and to have a proof of concept available and ready and up and running and working by the end of December 2023. All things going well, and with things working out the way we anticipate. Then in 2024, we bring in our second tranche of funding, and that's when we scale up by the 5,000 additional GPUs that we'll be purchasing when we bring in the second batch of Series A funding. And that's when we'll seriously scale up our capability, moving into hiring over 100 people. And through 2024, we'll be doing all of our scaling activities, working on bigger and bigger models, but we'll also then be involved in product development, seeing how the market is moving for large models, who's doing what, who's paying what for them, etc. And we anticipate that we'll start working with enterprises probably even this year already. I'm getting a lot of interest from enterprise in working with us on this project. So as we work with enterprises, their needs will also start to drive and shape the product development pipeline, with a view that by the beginning of 2025, we will be in mass global market rollout mode. Our models will be fully published and available and in use in enterprise already. Right. Is there anything else you guys would like me to take from that list before I leave you to it?
Many things to take.
Alrighty, over to you, Sergey. Are you going to start? There are a few. I interrupted us before we finished these technical questions. Rows 10, 11, 12, 13. How is the data fed into these large models, etc.? Maybe take it from there. How are you planning to train them? Row 9. NunNet's role.
NunNet's role. Okay. Yes, for sure, NunNet will play this role. Also, HyperCycle would play its role. This ecosystem cores, I would say, are really significant, and for Zarka as well. We had a lot of discussions on centralization idea versus decentralization idea in SingularityNET community, but I see no problem with combining these two approaches at all. Yes, we need large scale and huge scale for Zarka. That's absolutely obvious, because we need to we need to have computing power letting us train billions of models with billions of parameters, and dozens of billions of parameters really fast. Because for some cases we cannot have less, and we need it at least for experiments. Yes, the symbolic representation is super compact, but we also need a diversity on the verbalizer side. So we need generative power combined with symbolic knowledge and with an understanding of concepts. Not just, there is no conflict between these two things. More than that, I would say that models go multimodal, meaning different modalities like vision domain and robot automation, actions domain, time series domain, and this huge perspective in trading algorithms, in implementing language models, huge language models, and neural-symbolic architectures on trading algorithms with music and some other domains. So in fact, we go multi-domain, and also we go massively multilingual. And in Zarka, we are going to pay a lot of attention to low resource languages as well, because right now they deserve more attention. We need more resource low resource languages. We need these models work really fine on, let's say, something like 200 languages to make them implemented all over the world in different regions. So we pay a lot of attention on these things, and taking everything into account, multimodality shift to massive multilinguality in neural-symbolic integration, we totally need some kind of centralization, and we need large scale that advocates centralization. But by the way, at the same time, we also need decentralization to train many other subsystems like perceptual systems, to train different variations of models, different specific experts. We need it for inference. We need it for distributed symbolic components, which are easy to distribute. Huge neural networks, you just cannot train in a distributed way properly, because you need a supercomputer class bandwidth with connecting all of your GPUs to make the training process efficient. But we have massive scenarios for decentralization, and our vision is to combine centralization with decentralization in the most profitable way. And we still believe in decentralization. It's a very significant component for neural-symbolic systems and for AGI, which we just need decentralization to be operated and not monopolized. So yes, the answer is yes. Zarka will be perfectly combined with NunNet capabilities, with HyperCycle capabilities, with capabilities of different SingularityNET spin-offs, and with capabilities of all the system cores we have in SingularityNET as spin-offs, and in fact, their functions for a huge AGI system or neurosymbolic systems moving towards AGI. Anything to add, Matt, Alexey? Okay.
I would just re-emphasize that. I mean, I think everything you said makes sense, but re-emphasize that essentially we want to do more with less. So less overall data input, So some of these large language models may take many parameters in the initial settings, but we kind of want to get away from that longer term, I would argue, to make kind of, because to be able to that's the advantage of the neural-symbolic methods, is the ability not just to feed in the entire internet with trillions of parameters, but to be more reasonable, learning as you go, kind of like we do through our explorations. When we're born, we have some genetic information, but we also need to explore and learn. We don't have all of the internet fed in at once. Just re-emphasizing.
Thank you. We have a question about, one more question about superhuman levels of creativity, logical reasoning, and decision-making, which we claim is achievable in Zarka. I guess we answered this before, but maybe it's better to emphasize once again. I would advocate pure neural networks. In fact, they are creative, yes. And ChatGPT is creative. But it's a bit different type of creativity comparing to what we are going to achieve in Zarka. I really believe in logical-driven creativity, because just reusing the patterns in memory, that's the simple. That may be good for mass culture and everything else, but inventing something. Alexey was mentioning inventing case and opening the physics law, maybe theory improving. All these types of creativity are possible only for logical empowered AI. And you can witness sometime, then you just ask modern LLMs to answer on some specific question. It just starts hallucinating and gives really nonsense as output. And these models are good, but then they have nothing to rely within their memory. They start hallucinating, and logic prevents that process, because the grounded knowledge would be used to prevent hallucinating, and it will empower creativity significantly. And about superhuman level, there might be discussions, but anyway, I believe then if we can combine the generative power of neural networks on a massive scale with structured logical reasoning, which can operate over the huge metagraph of dynamic knowledge and support a dynamic world model, that will be superhuman right from the start, at least in some narrow domains, first of all. That's how AGI technological stack works. Maybe it will not be generalized to all the domains, which is more or less achievable for humans, but for some tasks, that would be superhuman level right from the start, because humans just don't have such a speed, such a power of logical operations these models could have. So that's why we are talking about superhuman, because human level, that's achieving human level, you immediately go to superhuman level, because there is no stop at human level for these models, at least in terms of productivity. If they are properly designed and work well, you immediately go superhuman.
Well, I would like to make a quick comment on when we are talking about logic. We, of course, don't mean old school first order predicate logic, just in case. So it's just a general concept. Maybe it's not. It may be somewhat misleading to call this logic for a wide audience, but yeah, I would say that there are two parts in this question. First one is about difference between ChatGPT and our approach, and another part about superhuman capabilities. And actually, yeah, I would like just to emphasize what has been said. ChatGPT has superhuman capabilities in certain sense. So it's not a question to go beyond superhuman capability. Calculator has superhuman capabilities. It's not a question to go beyond human in this sense. So it's more a question really about the difference between ChatGPT and Zarka in the reasoning domain, and this what has already been answered. So having an explicit knowledge, addressable knowledge, which can be queried in a explicit yet learnable way. So once again, in this case, logic doesn't mean something rigid, something crisp. It's just a way to say that we have queryable, but the form of querying can be learnable, queryable explicit knowledge, which can be combined queries to which can be chained in a recursive way, and that's how we can get more in terms of reasoning than ChatGPT can.
Okay, thank you so much, Alexey. Let's go through other questions. What we have here. Oh, this is interesting. Matt, could you please take this question? It's about responsibility and predictability of AGI. So people just wondering how we can bring responsibility, predictability, ethics, and why AGI is much more reliable in terms of inducing ethics than black box neural networks, for example.
So that's obviously a very broad question. I mean, I think that there's different ways to think about it. Clearly, I mean, interpretability, explainability, getting to kind of that hierarchy of scales is one way to view that issue. If you try to track the evolution of the universe, so to say, by trying to understand where every atom is going to be at every instant, at that small scale, things I wouldn't even know where to begin. Whereas if you have a few fundamental laws like Newton's laws or the theory of relativity that describes things in more large scale, human interpretable understanding, you can at least follow through the sequence in a more comprehensible manner, so that when things go wrong with the model, it's much easier to try to think through how to solve it, then oh, this molecule is, I misinterpreted where this molecule was at this particular point in time, and therefore the whole thing, the whole model exploded. But that's just one view of looking at it. And it goes down to, there's a lot of discussion about bias in terms of data. And I would argue you never really eliminate all bias, because you're biased by your experiences, by your training. My thought about AI and AGI is formed by my background, by what I learned over the decades. What one can try to do is be very transparent about, here's my biases. My mathematical background was largely in complex dynamical systems. That's largely how I think through problems. I openly admit that, and I start to see connections with other approaches at the same way. But I think another piece of that is, and something that can be learned from companies that don't follow this, is by developing really close connections with those who are working on the same problem, and respect, so that if I think we're going in the wrong direction, I feel perfectly open to push back. And I think that you need to have a team that is close, really close and tight, so that if somebody thinks has any qualms whatsoever, they should feel free to speak up, because that's the only way you're going to be able to address problems from the ground up. Because and I think that's what we have here. I mean, Ben has surrounded himself with people for decades, and I have not encountered anybody who doesn't feel open to criticize or suggest new directions along the way. I mean, that's one of those thorny ethical problems. How do you engender that? And I think that the more open you are to diverse viewpoints, it's good for what the community defines as directions for AGI, but also, I don't know if that answers the question that was originally posed.
To some extent, but to some extent, for sure, that's really a wide and interesting question. It's so many questions and requests to comment this. So thank you so much, Matt. That's really interesting point. Maybe Alexey, you also have something to say on that.
I guess we can skip on this and speed up a little bit.
Okay, I'll try to speed up. We don't have so many questions, in fact, now rest, but I will comment on this also on ethics and control and predictability. I will try to cover it from negative side, from the current limitations we see in neural language models, generative neural models, for example. When our models are pure black boxes, we also deal with some unexpected and bad behavior. So personally, I was involved in development of detoxifying system in the end of 2022, and I was just personally involved. It was really interesting. It's so hard to detoxify neural models. Sometimes you just you don't know even words that mean some offensive speech, because these words are just from super young people and in some specific subcultures, and even to explore that, it's hard. And what we see in this generative models right now, it could give you 99% of good results, but 1% could be toxic, could be hate speech, offensive speech, and something really bad. That's a fundamental restriction to use such models, for example, in education, in toys for kids. That's because this 1% or even fraction of a percent of unpredictability affects everything and affects use cases. So maybe it's even okay for business use, but not for such sensitive markets as kid toys and education. But we could make so many of good things by using AI in education. So neural-symbolic systems and proto-AGI system and AGI system are totally different in that case. The simplest thing, we could directly hard code them with some moral codex or with some behavior narratives on the level of their personality or on the level of behavior model. But there are much more, there are different ways to induce this representation for reliable non-toxic behavior in these models, and it will be still interpretable. The fundamental difference of these models that they would be interpretable. They could explain themselves and could make a deduction on their behavioral tree. So calculate back the behavior to the basic narratives. That's really significant step, not only towards AGI, but towards implementation of AI in a lot of areas. So I would emphasize that.
I would like to add, if we are talking about risks, then yes, a lot of people are actually worried about danger of AGI, and even about the danger of the current AI systems. And their worries actually might be true for pure neural systems, which are difficult to control. Of course, there are some problems to be solved with neural-symbolic systems, but they seem much more solvable in this way. And as I mentioned, for example, in Minecraft world, we have a symbolic system with explicit goals, which controls the neural components, which are a level below it, and it works. It's quite funny to look how neural systems, purely neural systems trained in reinforcement learning fashion, they can try to do things which simply don't make sense in situations in which they didn't appear during the training. And symbolic systems or neural symbolic systems can also do mistakes when their world model is not adequate to reality, but they can notice that they are doing something wrong, and they can just stop and think. And it's very interesting to see the difference in behavior on this concrete example between pure neural and neural symbolic systems, and the latter act much more like humans. Even if they are doing something wrong, you can see the reason behind what they are doing just by observing them. And pure neural systems in these situations, they work like a low-level animal which is trying to implement its instinct in a wrong situation. So it can dig a hole when it doesn't have something to put in this hole, and it may look really stupid and dangerous. So yeah, controllability is a real issue in this case.
Thank you so much. Okay, we have a question about using the blockchain and blockchain-based economy. I will answer that. Zarka is not a pure blockchain company, so it's investment invested by equity, so it's just equity company. But we really need a smart blockchain component to build the data ecosystem and model cycle ecosystem, and that will be done. We will use specific AI-driven blockchain contracts to facilitate this, and that would be a great synergy between SingularityNET as a community driver and Zarka. There are a lot of cases we can use for that. For example, in commercial sector, some company can contribute in some specific data sources and some extracted knowledge to make the whole industry develop from that. And this company, which is contributing in developing AI, could be rewarded. Some other companies which don't contribute but would like to use it as a product for their local market and for their tasks, to solve their tasks, they could pay. And this payment could be gathered and given as a reward for the company which contributed. Many things, many cases for individuals to contribute in AI. Many on different topics, on different just the model polishing, the model correction, some toxic answers, annotation. We would not rely only on community and the human in the loop concept. We mostly rely on AI teaching AI, strong method, as we call it. But the role of people and groups of people and commercial companies are really significant in order to co-contribute to do this. And we are not dealing with some no-name API like OpenAI now just hosts their models. Neural-symbolic AI is much easier to make individual, personalized, customized, and used and embedded in corporate structure or some, I don't know, home server, anything. That's much easier to distribute. And these models would be different models, even in case they share the same neural network body, being part of this neural-symbolic architecture. They could have absolutely different knowledge. They could process personalized knowledge on the side of a customer, on the end of a customer, whether corporate customer or just individual, which doesn't like to share his knowledge. And all this sharing of models and hosting of the models and different ways of contribution would be driven with AI, with using of smart contracts of novel design. That's a very interesting topic. But at the same time, we don't have token as we just don't tokenize the company. It's an equity company. Matt, very interesting question to you. I guess I will address it to you. We don't mind.
Sure.
Just a moment. I will find. I'm not sure what is meant here. I will cite. Anyone developing dependency relations among predicates, predicate dependent on other predicates in hierarchy, and using that to at least inform the LLM. I'm not sure what is meant. It meant that someone else developing this. For sure, we are developing that. So please comment this.
I'm not sure I have an answer. Can you repeat?
Yes, sure. Dependency relations among predicates, predicate dependent on other predicates in hierarchy.
Yeah, my guess is this is somewhat close to what we are talking about. So we have these symbolic components which influence neural components. We have this in case of existing LLMs as prompt, controlling of prompt by using predicates and relations over explicit knowledge. And in a case of more deep integration between LLMs and symbolic systems, this control will be much more native. So I would guess I would answer yes. Of course, it will be possible to. Where is this question to cite it? To inform the LLM about concrete relations and even higher order relations. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what we are doing. That's my comment. There's a question about feeding information and the data into the language models, into Zarka models, I suppose, not into the language models. There are many ways to inject the data. Conventional neural networks can take massive data on the pre-training phase. So we just collect a huge data set and pre-train the model. Some data might be added on specific data on the next stages of training, like fine-tuning or co-training with refactoring with reinforcement learning, how it's done for TruthGPT family. So all the models we have now scaled up, like ChatGPT, GPT-4, they all share that approach. So you have some specific data, which is like dozens of thousands of samples to fine-tune the model. It's not directly fine-tuning, but it works the same way. And you will need like trillions of tokens to pre-train the language model. So these two phases of just giving the data, feeding the data to the model, we will use for sure as well. So we will do the pre-training from scratch. We will do some operations on top of the model. Also, we will operate databases in real time. And we do that in our work setups right now. And we're experimenting and improving all these familiar techniques every day. Using databases just brings long-term memory with different functions. It could be just long-term memory about discussions, about facts, about anything. We also can use online web search. We can use different types of databases, like databases for general knowledge, databases for temporal knowledge, databases for personality, for some personal memory of the model. But that's simple as well. And there was a question about TruthGPT somewhere in questions. I'm not sure it's a good idea to comment other models in comparison with Zarka. Zarka is going to be something really new, but I will finish a bit. But this TruthGPT model was based on the idea of using some databases in inference time. So we will combine all these types of data using, and also the most significant thing is inducing knowledge directly from natural language data and using this data from knowledge graph to guide the model. Sorry, Matt, please go ahead.
Oh, no. I mean, I'm not sure that it's all that I didn't even know that TruthGPT was that far fleshed out. So
yeah, they're not just pre-trained. There's several stages of training, but that's okay. Okay, suppose we covered almost all the questions. A short question: does Zarka model need to be retrained each time you add new information? Depending on what part do you mean. If you mean, let's say, pre-training phase of neural part of neural-symbolic model, yes, it's pre-trained. It will be pre-trained in cycles. So let's say every month, for example, every 2 months. So it's you need huge resource to make some kind of pre-training, much less resource to for the fine-tuning or just co-training with reinforcement learning. And for symbolic part, there's no limit at all. It can take any relevant knowledge immediately and can adapt, potentially can adapt immediately. So that's one of the advantages of neural-symbolic systems, that symbolic part can take any knowledge right away from the world. That's why that's how situational awareness works in that case, and knowledge grounded works in that case. So yes, some parts of information could be used for preparation of huge neural models and the components used there. And before you do the pre-training without some new data, it's not relevant. But for neural-symbolic systems, we totally do not need this. Neither for language understanding components, nor for language generation components, and also any other types regarding different modalities, both for discriminative and generative models we use in neural-symbolic frameworks.
I would like to emphasize that, as I mentioned, if we remove at least some information from weights of the bottom-up neural network, which serves like a language reflex, and we train a rewritable memory, which can be purely symbolic or neural symbolic by itself, then we don't need to train or to fine-tune this bottom-up component each time, because the main information, the main knowledge, I would say, will be stored not in the weights of this large transformer, but in the rewritable memory. And the main thing will be to train a model to use this reading and writing heads, if we take this neural machine-like terminology. Of course, when we are talking about a very fluent capabilities of language processing and generation, then to excel in some particular task, it would be better to fine-tune this reflex-like components, so it will do things faster without thinking, just on instincts. But yes, as Sergey said, it can be done just to update the models from time to time, but for storing new information and be able to access this information, it will not be really needed, hopefully.
Yeah, and we really explore different approaches, and maybe design of just the basic design, which was used to train neural networks for the last 10 years, maybe even more, could be changed, and we may shift to differentiable neural computer architecture, which wasn't the mainstream the last years, but it's one of the most interesting and maybe fruitful directions of neural-symbolic integration we are experimenting with. We just didn't announce that technique, in fact, but good point, Alexey. Thank you so much. Okay, I guess we seem to cover everything. Some question about symbolic components. How symbolic components differ from GPT model. GPT itself does symbolic manipulation, causes language model, and does sequence to sequence. What should symbolic component bring on top? Symbolic components brings relevant knowledge. In our case, it will be done directly induced by neural model, or brought via this memory, right, through reading heads, which the model trained to use properly during pre-training phase. So symbolic representation would be shared with natural language representation and some other domains, like visual representation and some kind of action representations. We will all the different domains in stages one by one, or just moving to better and better representation from the experiment to experiment to cover, to find the best recipe for multimodal combination and the combination of symbolic representation and natural representation. I guess that's it. One of the tricky techniques is just to induce logic right from natural language data. So it's some kind of, it may be understood like a discriminative task, I suppose, let's say. Not totally sure that's the right formulation, but that's one of the most interesting tricks, and we are working on that for long. In fact, we are incubating all the techniques and methods for that, for building practical, large-scale neural-symbolic architectures. We're incubating that in SingularityNET for a long time. So most of these things are pre-done to some extent. I guess we covered everything.
Well, there were a few questions about TruthGPT.
I was mentioning that, yeah.
Go ahead.
TruthGPT is just a system which uses databases and, I suppose, searchable databases for prompting the existing models. And the way I understand it, they don't have a lot of academic papers to read, but I guess that's most straightforward. That's a good thing to do right now if you like to use, let's say, ChatGPT out of the box. So you could just take some knowledge from some reliable source and just prompt this knowledge in the right way. So you don't have to change the design, change the architectures, make some serious step towards AGI, towards interpretability, but you get a bit more controllability and a bit more goal-oriented behavior. So that's how I comment this.
At the same time, I would add that it loses something because I played a little bit with it, and it fails to answer a lot of questions. So it just answers, I cannot do this, and that's all. So it seems that when it fails to query its databases in a direct way or something like this. So it's a good idea, I agree, at the current moment of time, but technologically it's different, and its aim is somewhat different from Zarka.
Okay. Yeah, seems we covered everything. Do we have some novel questions in YouTube, maybe? Sorry. No, I don't see any comments. But maybe if someone would like to ask some questions in YouTube, maybe we could answer that a bit later in text. So I will try to answer some questions. In case we missed something, we really try. Please repeat the question on YouTube. I will just take a look a bit later. So thank you so much for the discussion. Thank you, Alexey. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you,
It sounds like we'll be doing more of these, is what Peter indicated.
Maybe, why not?
Do this more often. So
yes, please feel free to send the questions. Some of them are really interesting and really inspiring to answer. So thank you for your feedback. See you soon.
thank you.
Thanks.